Thank you, everybody, for joining this IALD Middle East session. Our webinar today is a collaboration between IALD Middle East and Tridonic, and we will be discussing human-centric lighting. For those of you who don't know us, the IALD is the International Association of Lighting Designers, and we focus on promoting the importance of lighting design in the construction industry. If you are interested in becoming a member, you can visit our website at www.iald.org or email us at middleeast@iald.me. So with that said, let's introduce our presenter. Wahid Shalabi has been in the lighting industry for more than 10 years, holding positions in both sales and technical teams in renowned lighting companies. He is PMP certified and holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Jordan University of Science and Technology. He is currently Tridonic Middle East main proponent for lighting controls and solutions. And a little bit also about our sponsor. Tridonic is a Zumtobel Group Company and a provider of lighting technology for professional applications. With their technology, they meet the most important standards in sustainability and follow a cradle-to-cradle approach. They actively contribute to making lighting production more environmentally friendly around the world. Their system solutions and lighting components are designed to regulate light usage, reduce power consumption, and increase efficiency. A testament to this is the fact that they are the first electronics manufacturer to get Cradle-to-Cradle certified for their LED modules and LED drivers. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Wahid. It's all yours, Wahid.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Good afternoon, and also good morning and good evening to our attendees from other regions. So I think we can dive right into our content for today. So our webinar today is entitled A Look into Human-Centric Lighting. So this is meant to be a good look, an overview of the basic concepts surrounding human-centric lighting. So we mean to untangle some of the concepts, some of the ideas. Unfortunately, the scope of this webinar does not include a deep dive into the subject, which is a very wide and obviously a very important subject, but we hope to lay a good groundwork so that this important discussion can still happen between us as lighting professionals. So, as always, we start with a question. What is human-centric lighting? So, before we can answer this question or shed some light, we should take a step back and look at an important factor, an obvious one maybe, but is central to our discussion here. The simple fact that our bodies have evolved under natural sunlight. And so our bodies have evolved processes that happen autonomously without any conscious decision from our side, and is directly influenced by the changes in natural sunlight. Now, as our day-to-day activities started to change, as our lifestyles started to change, we started to move more into the indoor. And so we started to move from being subjected to natural sunlight, natural lighting, into artificial lighting. And so we slowly, as our knowledge evolved, we started to realize that we are missing something here. We are craving something that we are missing from natural sunlight. Simply because when artificial lighting was initially started as products and as schemes, it was designed for tasks, designed for spaces, not designed for people. So when we currently do our lighting designs, when we are designing our lighting schemes, when we are designing our lighting products, do we now fully consider the effect that it has on the well-being of the occupants? And this is basically what we are trying to shed light upon today. So we're trying to shift the view from designing for spaces into designing for people. And so going back to our original question, what is human-centric lighting? Now, this is maybe a visual that we see a lot, human-centric lighting with an image of the moving sun and changing color from cool to warm. So is that it? Is that what human-centric lighting is? Is human-centric lighting the same as tunable white lighting? Is human-centric lighting the same as mimicking the change of the color temperature of natural sunlight? Is that it? Is that the definition of human-centric lighting? Well, we'd like to offer the opinion today that no, this is not what human-centric lighting is, in our opinion, because in our opinion, we are very fond of the concept and the phrase of human-centric lighting is not a product feature. It is not something that you will see on a luminaire data sheet, but it is a design decision. That decision being that we are going to be designing our lighting schemes and lighting products with the well-being of the occupants, the users, as the main focal point, as the center point of our design process. And thus, again, human-centric lighting is a design decision. In other words, it is nothing more or less than premium lighting. And this is what we're going to delve into today. So taking a step further, so what does this mean exactly? And in practical terms, what does it entail? So we like to think of the decision as coming as pertaining to 5 important concepts. First is the obvious one, the well-being, quality, controllability, whether it's individual control or autonomous control, and sustainability. So let's take those one by one and have a closer look. So designing for well-being, what does that mean? So basically how we like to think about it is that we should understand the effect that a lighting stimuli has on our bodily functions, and we should consider this effect when we are doing the design for both our lighting schemes and our lighting products. So it is something akin to giving the individual the empowering the individual to be able to choose the music and the volume of his liking that makes him feel good. But of course, lighting will have a much more profound impact. So when we look at quality, now this is maybe something that is used a lot. The word quality is used a lot when describing products. It's used as a marketing tool. But really, when we talk about human-centric lighting, quality becomes something which is concrete and measurable, whether we are referring to the parameters of the product itself or the deliverables of the lighting design. Controllability, we really cannot talk about a human-centric approach to lighting without referring to the control aspect of it, because this is about empowering the individual. So giving the flexibility to the individual to choose his surrounding lighting that fits him or her the best should be central to a good human-centric lighting scheme. Also, if we talk about control, we should never disregard the importance of autonomous lighting control, because it certainly lays lots of groundwork that helps move along the process of human centricity in lighting designs. And last but not least, we can never talk about something which is human-centric without mentioning the idea of sustainability. So in this case, we are talking about designing for sustainable products. So we are referring to designing products with built-in replaceability of light sources, drivers. We are talking about sustainable materials. So we are talking about concepts like cradle to cradle, et cetera, because obviously what goes around comes around. So before we wrap up this part of our presentation, we want to ask another core question here. So are we talking only luminaires? So yes, we are talking about human-centric lighting, which is obviously centered around the light fitting the luminaire. But is that it? Are we only referring to the luminaire part? Well, we'd like to argue here that a closer look should be taken. So inside the luminaire itself, a closer look should be taken on the light sources, the LED module, the LED chip. Does it have the quality parameters that is necessary for human-centric lighting, in terms of spectrum, color, et cetera? And the driver, does the driver offer the quality parameters which are necessary for a human-centric lighting design in terms of flicker control, in terms of the ability to dim up and down and all that? When we talk about human-centric lighting, we talk about control. So do we offer the right products in terms of sensors, in terms of user interfaces, smart devices, the ability to control from devices that are available to everybody, like a smart app or a tablet? So we feel that a human-centric lighting as a concept is much wider than just the luminaire. Moving on now to our second part of our content today, which is the human response. So since we are talking about designing for well-being, designing for human centricity, then we should try to gain a good understanding of what does the human response to our lighting stimuli look like. Now, this is, in my opinion, an extremely fascinating subject. It is, you can easily dedicate an entire webinar series just to this part of the discussion. Now, for today, obviously, it's beyond the scope of this webinar to do a deep dive into the intricacies of the human response, and is definitely beyond my capabilities as a lighting professional, because this also involves the human part of it. So I myself have attended webinars where medical professionals were presenting on this subject, doctors. So, but we try to give a good brief and highlight the concepts that we feel are core to this discussion. So the first part of the human response is the intuitive one. So the visual response. This is very clear. Our eyes have evolved to detect lighting and interpret it in the brain into images. And this obviously affects our ability to do basic tasks. It affects our comfort and performance. But which is in itself is a very interesting subject. But what we will try to put a spotlight on today is the non-visual part. So what we call the circadian part. Now, although the non-visual response in the eyes and the brain does affect also the performance and the comfort, but what we would really like to put the spotlight on today is the circadian part, which we feel is perhaps the part that is more neglected, maybe, and when we design for lighting schemes and lighting products. So to give a simple brief, the circadian rhythm is a natural human process. It is the rhythm that the human body has developed in response to the natural day and night cycle, which is obviously related to the natural change in natural sunlight. So this is pronounced in the body by a number of bodily functions, but we would like to focus on one particular bodily function today, which is most related to the main topic that we want to discuss today, and it is definitely the most pronounced, which is the production of a certain hormone in our bodies called melatonin. So simply, our body produces this hormone to either prepare the body ramps up the production of melatonin to prepare the body for a good rest in the evening and in the nighttime. This happens naturally. And then the body would stop producing the melatonin in high quantities so that the body can be alert for the day. So if we look at, second please. Yes, so if we look at this part of the graph here, so during nighttime, when the evening approaches, our body automatically starts producing more and more melatonin so that our body is readying for a night of good rest. And as our bodies and eyes are hit with the first rays of sunlight, this process is reversed. And our melatonin levels will go way down so that our bodies can be ready for a day of good work. This obviously happens automatically, day and night cycle all the time. And the key point that we want to discuss here is that it is related to the natural changes in sunlight. It changes in intensity and changes in the color content of the natural sunlight. So if we, instead of following the melatonin, if we follow the sunlight parameters here, we see that obviously intensity increases during the morning hours, and also the natural sunlight tends to be rich in the blue color content, which makes the light look cooler during the daylight. And as the evening approaches, intensity goes down, obviously, and the color content starts shifting into the warmer part, so less blue content. And this is what is extremely significant in managing the response and the melatonin production in our bodies. So now, since we are talking about the artificial lighting part of this, we should take a bit of a closer look and consider something which is extremely important here, and in my opinion, extremely interesting. So it seems, so this graph that you see here is the spectral sensitivity, the standard spectral sensitivity of humans to different spectrum of light. So it seems that we have evolved distinct sensitivities to the photopic part of the lighting stimuli that contributes to the production of visuals and images in our brains. And we have evolved a different sensitivity, or rather a sensitivity to a different part of the spectrum when it comes to the activation of the circadian rhythm, or the disruption of the circadian rhythm. So, in other words, when it comes to seeing things, our eyes are most sensitive to the green part of the spectrum, which is this part over here. So this is what we are referring to here. So it seems that our bodies or our eyes will tend to notice things that are green more. So if we put similar light sources of similar intensities in front of us, our eyes will see the green one as the brightest one. However, when we talk about the activation or the disruption of the circadian rhythm of the melatonin production, it seems that we are sensitive, or rather we are most sensitive to the part of the spectrum related to the blue part of the spectrum. And this is what is significant here, and this is what we would like to shed a light upon when we talk about designing for lighting products and designing for lighting schemes. So let's have a look at two different light sources there on the left. And on the spectrum of these light sources, superimposed is our sensitivity. So the above is a cool white LED light with the rich blue spectrum or blue part of the spectrum. On the lower part is a warm white LED light with a not so rich part in the blue part of the spectrum. We refer to the above as high potency light and the below as low potency light. So, which means that the first one, the cool white LED, is highly potent in activating or disrupting the circadian rhythm, the circadian response to lighting. And the lower one, the warm white LED, is low potent in disrupting this circadian rhythm. So if we look at our natural day and night cycle on the right-hand part, if we go and apply a highly potent, rich in the blue spectrum part light during the evening time, where our body is ramping up the melatonin production, readying us for a night of good rest and good sleep, if we go ahead and do this, what would inevitably happen is a phenomenon which we try to avoid, and I'm referring to the suppression, the melatonin suppression. So basically what we are doing is that our body is preparing for a good night's sleep, and we give it a stimuli that gives a contradicting order. So it gives an order to wake up because, hey, there's a lot of blue light around. So this is particularly what we are trying to avoid. And melatonin suppression has become something of a focal point with lighting designers and lighting professionals as something that we should try to avoid in order to have the minimum disruption to the natural circadian rhythm. Finally, in this part of the presentation, we'd like to give a moment to consider how do we quantify this? How do we measure it? How do we put a number to it? So obviously, there are a number of publications out there with good attempts to kind of quantify this. So we have decided to highlight the concept of melanopic lux, because we feel it is maybe the most relevant to this discussion. And so simply it means that we have our lighting parameter lux, our lumen per meter squared that we know very well, which is the amount of light that's falling on a certain surface that we can measure with a lux meter, where this metric does not consider the circadian part of things. We simply calculate based on it another lux, which we call the melanopic lux, which considers the circadian part. And the formula looks something like this. We have our melanopic lux, EML, which equals our photopic lux, the one that we know, times a factor. And obviously, this factor now will be a function of the quality of the light, the quality of the light source. And obviously, it will depend on the spectrum of the light source. So what we are trying to find here, so we know that a healthy sleep cycle leads to good health. That is a known fact everywhere. Now we'd like to dig deeper, to take a few steps back to see where we can contribute as lighting professionals, as lighting designers, as consultants, contractors in the construction business. How can we contribute with lighting to this particular cycle? So if we take a step back, what we have discussed today is that a healthy circadian rhythm will definitely contribute to a healthy sleep cycle and thus resulting in better health. And at its core, this is our part now, is human-centric lighting. So this is the missing link here. So human-centric lighting as a concept, as a decision, as premium lighting will definitely contribute to this very healthy cycle of healthy circadian rhythm, healthy sleep cycle, and inevitably better health. Well, we'd like to take maybe a practical example here. So what does a decision towards human centricity look like when we are, say, designing for a lighting scheme? We take an example which is very relevant. Our target audience here, our target users are our youth, our students, and schools and at homes. So obviously there are a few steps that can be taken. Major upon them is bringing sunlight into those spaces, which cannot be stressed upon enough. There's something that is not maybe related to human-centric lighting, or rather not lighting professionals, but it is so potent, so important that we had to mention it here, which is the limitation of phone use, because obviously all phones, devices, tablets, TV screens are predominantly LED backlit by LED lighting, which is based on blue light, blue LEDs. So we really had to mention it here. But what we would like to highlight is, rather than the idea here is that we cannot have darkness during the nighttime. Obviously, our lifestyles have grown beyond that. So we have to have light in the evening. We have to have light during the nighttime. So if we have to, then at least we can take a step of, rather than giving a highly potent light source in the evening, we can design for and produce select products which provide high visual quality in terms of color rendering, the right kind of intensity, the spectrum, the dimmability, etc., but with low potency. And this should contribute to making the melatonin suppression at its lowest. Obviously, we cannot reach the perfect of 0 because light does disrupt the circadian rhythm. But if we take these steps, then we can really help to mitigate this negative effect. Now, before we move on into the last part of our discussion, a word here about maybe a more wider view of human-centric lighting, a bird's eye view, if you will. So this is what a local day metropolis looks like at night, obviously a festival of lighting. What we are looking at here is key considerations that should be taken into account when we design for urban lighting, for city lighting in general, not for indoor spaces only. So the considerations that we'd like to put forth here are, what are the direct effects that these artificial lighting have on us when we drive around in street lighting, etc.? Very similar to the considerations that we had for indoor lighting that we have discussed, but also what effects will these have on the non-human inhabitants? So our flora and fauna and animals, our insects, which may seem like a not very relevant subject here because we're talking about human-centric lighting, but what we'd like to highlight here, and which is mentioned in a number of very respectable publications, is that this direct effect on the non-human inhabitants will have an indirect effect on us humans through the natural way that the ecosystem is, the natural way that the ecosystem exists. So it should definitely be considered when we are designing for urban spaces. Also, we should never neglect the negative effect of the light intrusion into indoor spaces. So here we are referring to perhaps designing a lighting for a utility space, which is located in a residential area. And if the the intrusion into indoor space is not taken into consideration, then we can have this one property negatively affecting the lives of the inhabitants in that area because of poorly designed lighting or poorly selected lighting products. All right, so we are coming to the last part in our discussion. So here we'd like to give a consideration to, well, we are talking about the construction business, we're talking about products. So how does this affect the whole thing from a financial point of view, from a cost point of view? Now, obviously, this is a very wide subject, so maybe studies can be dedicated to this, but we'd like to give a small example here, a simple office, and we'd like to see the cost implication of taking a step towards human centricity. Here, I'm referring to moving or specifying from an on-off based lighting to a daily based lighting scheme. So when we talk about moving from the on-off to the daily, I'm simply, in terms of cost, I'm simply referring to the investment in a daily driver rather than an on-off driver and a simple control system, which is very well known in the industry that it is a very reasonable investment, not a very big one, to go into simple daily. Now, what do we get here? I mean, why is this human-centric? Well, what this gives is flexible control, dimmability, etc., etc. And if a decision is made later that we're going to upgrade the lighting sources into sources capable of color changing, then the daily will be able to handle that part. And it gives you the ability to integrate into bigger control system, bigger ecosystems. So you get so much value from such a small investment. So to wrap up here, we started with a question, we're going to end with one. Is it worth it? So obviously the question here is not whether it's worth it to do things to improve the health of people. Obviously, this is an obvious yes for everyone, right? This is a no-brainer. But actually, we'd like to take a pragmatic view here. So a very practical view. Is it worth it from a cost benefit, from an ROI point of view to invest in this kind of thing? So yes, there will be some cost to investment in product, investment in better designs, etc. Definitely there will be. But what we believe is that we, inshallah, will get on the other side of things is more productivity, less absence, and reduced healthcare costs, which even from a pragmatic point of view is an excellent return on investment. With this, I'd like to thank our participants very much for their kind attention. Also, I would like to invite you all to visit our page on LinkedIn and the IALD Middle East page for updates on similar events. Thank you very much, and I will hand it over to Maria, who will handle the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Wahid. That was actually very, very interesting. And to all of our attendees, the Q&A session is open, so feel free to add your questions to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And in the meantime, I'm going to start with one question, Wahid, because what you said is that is definitely worth it from both points of view, from making people feel better and also as an investment. But how can we sell this to the end clients? What is, in your opinion, the best way for us to put human-centric lighting in front of a client?
Well, I believe the best way here is to start with the internationally renowned and well-respected institutions that give certification to buildings for such parameters. So there are a number of them out there, like WELL, etc., that certify facilities based on this including other things. So I think usually when you speak to the end user, to the client, maybe we cannot delve into the intricacies of the small technical things, but if we present our solutions, if we present our ideas, and look, these major institutions have done a lot of work and agreed that doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and certifying your building in compliance to this standard and this standard and this standard will give your occupants, okay, the benefits of this and this and this, better health, etc., etc. Then the client, obviously, any client will be happy to give his occupants, his users, more comfortable, better health and more comfort. But also, they will have the confidence that this is not just a sales pitch, but rather this is something which is internationally agreed and accepted. So this is the way I feel about it. This is the way it should be presented.
That is very interesting because I have a well certification, and I definitely get very I am very interested in the wellness of people that live and work in the environments that we design. But unfortunately, whenever we try to sell these you know these design solutions to clients, sometimes they just feel about lighting. Lighting is just to see, right? Lighting has no effect on people whatsoever. Although we know that the this is not the case, like exactly as you explained during your presentation. So, my opinion as well is we need a lot of education, and not only amongst ourselves, lighting designers, but we really do have to go out there and educate clients and people about the importance of how we use lighting, and how we involve lighting in our lives, because it definitely has a massive effect, and if we manage it in the wrong way, it can have a massive negative effect on all of us. But anyway, thank you
Yeah,
for your answer. Yeah, go ahead.
and also if you present it from an investment point of view, there is a simpler way. There's definitely a simpler way, a more cost-effective way to do it. It's not like you have to invest in very fancy control systems and extremely expensive lighting and lighting components. That is definitely not the case. I mean, very simple steps towards human centricity can be done with a minimal cost. And I think that's a decision that most end users will take in an instant. So I think, if you present your ideas in an honest and transparent way, then I think the market will respond uh, positively to it.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, just a reminder to all of our attendees that the Q&A is open, so take advantage of Wahid's presence in this webinar, and feel free to send him questions or comments. We would love to hear your opinion about the presentation. And as Wahid said, this is a very introductory sort of presentation. So if you would like to hear more about human-centric lighting, or if you would like to see a presentation that goes deeper into the topic, we are more than happy to organize one. So just let us know. And in the meantime, we will keep just this conversation going in case that will inspire our attendees to send us some of your questions. So Wahid, you mentioned that there's definitely options in terms of budgets, right? So can you give us a little bit more information about what kind of options are available that may not involve a very high cost?
Well, let's say that I'm a lighting designer or a consultant, and I'm putting together a lighting schedule for a project. So if I simply take a closer look at the data sheet of a reputable manufacturer where I can trust the information, if I look at few parameters, say in the driver datasheet or the LED source datasheet, these simple steps, which may cost nothing really, okay, can go a long way, like looking at the uh, values for the stroboscopic effect on the driver datasheet and the current ripple effect in the driver datasheet and the TM30 or the CRI and the LED datasheet. These simple look, which costs nothing, can take me a step towards human centricity. Maybe taking something else, like the one that we mentioned, which I truly believe in, a move into a DALI system or a comparable system where you have the flexibility of individual control and autonomous control, whereas it's most likely a very, very modest investment. It can go a long way. Putting sensors in place, so giving more switching control if I don't want to go for a fully fledged lighting control, putting more switches, maybe providing dimmers so people can dim up and down to their comfort. These small things, can, I believe, go a long way.
Interesting. It can, yeah, I guess that having control of your lighting can have a very good psychological effect on the people that are in that space.
Yes, absolutely.
That's cool.
Um, yeah. Um, Also, maybe I mentioned today tunable white as a as something which is in the beginning of my presentation. I said that tunable white is not human-centric lighting, which I feel that it's a valid statement. But also, I should mention here that tunable white as a parameter of the product can contribute to a good human-centric lighting scheme. So the ability to make that color change or to make that spectrum change, right, can contribute. So it is I would say, a smaller part of a much bigger concept, but it's not it. So that was the point there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've also heard that, it doesn't matter how much you do, for example, in a person's office, if when they go home, they turn on the lights and it's a massively blue light, for example. So all the good that you did while people were in the office is undone when they go home. So that's why I also mentioned that it's good to start talking about education as well, so that when people go home, they are able to apply certain, like you say, very simplistic approaches that will help them um, get a better night's sleep and a night rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, it seems that our attendees don't have any questions today. I really hope that you found this as interesting as I did. So we will probably close the session now and give you all some 15 minutes back to your day. Like I said, I hope that you found this presentation interesting, and feel free to reach out to us and tell us if you want to hear more about it. Oh, we have a
I
question.
think we have a question.
We do. So, Jaren Joseph is asking, is there any particular standard that we need to follow for human-centric lighting? Meaning, which CCT needs to be followed at what time?
Right. Uh, well, I can input my answer here, and maybe Maria, you can also put in your thoughts. So, well, there that's actually a very good question, because in my opinion, maybe there is not a universally accepted standard, right? There are good institutions out there. So the one that you have mentioned before, like the well building standard, does put a checklist of what the color temperature should be in the morning and in the evening, and a checklist whether light is controllable, not controllable, etc., etc. So that is a good example. So there are a few, I would say, niche standards, maybe in IEC and such institutions. But in answer to the question, I would say it is not mature enough right now that we can call it, yes, a standard. So this is something that we are hoping to see, Jaren. So thank you very much for the question.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, the different CCTs of different time changes with the location. So as you said, there are some institutions out there that are studying this, and they're creating curves that can be followed so that according to your location and time of the year, you can have um, a list of CCTs that you can follow throughout the day, and depending on the date in the year and all of that. But there is no particular standard. There's no specific numbers that you have to follow on a daily basis. It will be dependent on location, time of the year, or season of the year, and also time of the day.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that was a very good question. Thank you, Jaren. So, as I was saying, I think we will close it for now. But of course, you all received emails from us. So if you have any other questions, feel free to send them to us via email. We'll be happy to answer them. If you also feel like um, you would like to hear more about this topic, please let us know. You can follow us on LinkedIn and leave us messages, or you can send us email and responding in response to the emails that you received. So I want to thank you all for your attendance, and please keep an eye on the IALD Middle East LinkedIn page for any future events. And thank you, Wahid, for this really cool presentation, and I'll let you know. We'll definitely want to hear more about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria, and thank you for everyone who joined us. Thank you very much.